The Man Whore Podcast is sponsored by HotMovies.com. Try out some ethical, paid-for porn for free with none of those hidden fees or secret subscriptions when you sign up at HotMovies.com and use the promo code MANWHORE. Now let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Man Whore Podcast.
Shout out to all the yogis and yonis, to the woo-woos and the wahoos. This is Billy Procida, and you are listening to the Man Whore Podcast. Hey, welcome to this sex-positive show hosted by a comedian that is not a comedy podcast. This week on the show, we got on I'm not even sure exactly how to phrase it, but I guess a somatic sexual healer, someone who practices sonic sex healing, Megwyn White. She'll tell you what she does. She can do it way better than I do. I'm very excited to share her with y'all in a bit. We're talking a lot about connectivity and energy. This is a woo-woo heavy episode, and I like to think that I was pretty damn mature about it all. In fact, we talked so much about energy and connectivity, then I ended up going that night to a sex party where I had, an odd... Like I didn't move more than 3 feet, and yet I found myself in like 4 or 5 different sexual configurations. Like 2 of them were threesomes, and yet I was connected to none of it. Like I should, by all objective standards, be incredibly turned on and excited about the fact that I am sharing the sexual space with these 2 chicks. One of whom I'd had a crush on for maybe like about a year. I should have been overjoyed, and yet I wasn't feeling much of anything. If I am face deep in a vulva, I should feel somewhat connected to something. Doesn't even necessarily have to be her, but I should be tapped into some kind of sexual energy. And yet I found myself, instead of like excitedly eating pussy, I found myself just licking a vulva. Right now, though, I want to tell y'all about something that I am excited about, that I am connected to. We're going to do something pretty cool to celebrate, 300 episodes of the podcast. Some of you may have seen some photos of me getting body painted over the years. Maybe even with my dingling out if you saw it on Twitter. Well, to celebrate 300 episodes, which is coming up soon, people, we are going to paint the name of every one of my Patreon members on my beautiful naked body. Yep, all members in good standing as of December 25th will get their names drawn on my body and will get at least one photo where your name is clearly visible after we do a little photo shoot. This is a limited time offer, whores. If you ever thought about tucking $2 down my pants, this is the time to do it. And I know you're wondering, who gets to be on the dick? Well, I think we may offer that honor to the largest pledge as of December 25th. Or maybe the 2 largest if like your names are short. We'll see. I only have like 6 inches of space to work with. There is one catch. We're only doing this if we reach 200 members in the next 2 weeks. Shouldn't be hard. Don't stress. We're at 190 right now, so I can't imagine we don't get there. But yes, I'm covering myself in your names to celebrate nearly 6 years of slutty podcasting. And I want to thank all of you whoreheads on Patreon for helping it keep happening. I've been pumping out podcasts every Wednesday for 296 consecutive Wednesdays. I think that's something worth celebrating. And I also love any excuse to take my clothes off and have my picture taken. Let's be honest. Again, this is for all members in good standing as of December 25th. If you delete your pledge on December 26th, I won't be mad at you. You'll still get your name on my bod. So become a member today and get your name on me in the new year. Visit patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Oh, that's going to be so much fun. Can't wait. All right. Yeah, it's been a while since I've read an advice email, I feel like. I might be mistaken, but I think the last one was the puke dick girl. Remember her? Well, this one's a little less graphic. This one comes from Emily. She writes, "Good morning, Billy. I found you through Keith and the girl and love you and the Man Whore podcast. Maybe you can help me. I recently started dating somebody that I liked so much that I was willing to try polyamory. Now, I love poly and your podcast has really helped. I agree with you that the ethical slut chapter on jealousy should be mandatory reading for everyone. My main issue is I love my primary. He says he loves me, but my primary doesn't have enough time for me. And the other girlfriends agree. They want more time too. I wish it were like 2 to 4 people because we could share then. But it's like more than 6 main girlfriends and there's more. Which I assume means like he's got the 6 girlfriends plus people he's fucking. I want at least 3 days a week and more texting, but that's not an option. I can fill my dance card with pussy and dick, but when all my holes are filled, he is the one who fills my heart. Aw. Do you have any advice? Should I just be patient? I feel like we could be having a deeper connection, which he says he wants. But how can we do that if there's no time? Thank you, Billy. Oh, and here's some lewds because I think that's your favorite currency. And she sent, you know, that's a very cute butt and some very pretty nips. She also sent a picture where she's got these just beautiful blue eyes. Just what a... You fan whores are just a bunch of hotties, okay? I love y'all so much. But also, wow. Like, what a life to have. To have 6 or more main girlfriends and lovers on top of that to boot. I'm exhausted just hearing about it. This guy must be the most gorgeous, charming motherfucker out there. I'm not going to make too many assumptions about him yet, but Emily, what I would say is beware the poly imposter. You know who I'm talking about. That suave dude with great hair who could lead a few dozen kids into a murder orgy cult. He's woke, he's sex positive, and he's got a gluten allergy, which you think humbles him. But make sure your guy's not a player masquerading as poly, is all I'm saying. Because that's like a thing. And that goes for men and women. Men aren't the only ones who do it, but there are a good chunk of men who do. I'm just saying having more than 6 romantic relationships is like elite varsity level poly. And I honestly don't think one person can truly juggle that many plus casual sexual partners unless some of those people are like long distance. That's just a red flag to me. I mean, honey, are you sure he is your boyfriend? Is he? Does he think he is your boyfriend? Have y'all defined what that means? Again, I don't know how long you two have been together or anything about him, but ultimately you have to decide what you are or aren't willing to put up with. You could always de-escalate the relationship to something more sensible. Like a boyfriend you emotionally commit to needs to be able to give you a certain amount of attention and time. But a casual sex partner who you let yourself rev back on with the emotions, maybe 2 or 3 sex dates a month is plenty. The only caveat there is only do that if you're honestly going to pull back emotionally. Otherwise, you're just giving him pussy when you still want more, and he'll be justified for it because you agreed. And thank you for the nudes. Cold hard cash is still my favorite currency, but yeah, I do still accept nudes in the DMs from y'all ladies. And fellas, you're allowed to send me nudes. It just, you got to write my name on it. That's because that's the only way I'm going to be really interested in looking at your dick. And if you want to send me, a comment, a question, photografias, as they say in the Espanol, you can send me an email at manwhorepod@gmail.com. And I feel like this is something a lot of people can relate to. So if you were relating to Emily, if you want to share what you've maybe some solutions you found and how to manage a ton of partners, also hit me up. I'll share it. Hopefully I can share that with Emily as well. Okay. Before we get to my guest this week, Megwyn, let's do the fan whore appreciation moment. Okay. real quickly, this is the part of the podcast where I like to thank some of the members of my fan whore community on Patreon. And right now I want to say thank you to Crystal Morse. You know, you pledged and then you were gone so soon. You should come back and, get your name on my body. But hey, I appreciate the support while I had it. Thank you so much to Paul Dorfman. I looked up Dorfman, just the name, and it literally translates to village man. So I just think a Village People tribute band is in your future, dude. You pick if you want to be the cop, the Native American, whoever. The sailor seems to be popular. Shout out to Alex Ambrose, who I hear is a Pepsi gal. I hope you're enjoying being part of the community now. And I want to give a thank you to Brian Tosh. You're a very good boy. And you're behaving yourself quite well in the Peep Show. Proud of you. And one more time, again, you too can become a member of our fan whore community for as little as $2 a month. And right now, for a limited time only, until December 25th, if you become a member, you can get your name painted on my body. And then you can get a picture or two to prove it. Become a member today at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Over here at the Man Whore Podcast, we are a big fan of hashtag paying for some of your porn. And that's why I love that I'm sponsored by hotmovies.com. It is fantastic. We're not doing Cast That Porn this week because I actually want to share with y'all something special going on Hot Movies. It's December. I actually almost forgot about this because they do this every year and it's so fun. They have an advent calendar and it's live right now. If you join today, you can get started on it. And on every day of December leading up to Christmas, you click on a date and it's going to give you a free prize. Like today, I'm recording this on December 10th. So I clicked December 10th and it gave me a 7-day free rental of A Night in Paris. Which, if you're not a porn connoisseur, A Night in Paris is the Paris Hilton porno, which is available at hotmovies.com, but I'm going to get to watch it for free. I don't have to use my minutes. I don't have to rent it outright. I can just go ahead and watch it for the next 7 days. So you can do that actually every day leading up to Christmas Day. And to do so, you got to make an account, but that's easy to do. You're going to go to hotmovies.com, use promo code MANWHORE, you'll get 20 free minutes right then and there. And then on each day of the week, you might get free minutes. You might get access to a free movie or a free scene. If you're not familiar with hotmovies.com, it's a pay-per-minute porn site. So you go on there, you buy a bundle of minutes, and you watch whatever pornos you want to watch for how long you want to watch them. No need to pay $25 a month if you really only need like 10 minutes a month. You know what I mean? So one more time, go to hotmovies.com, use promo code MANWHORE, get some free minutes, and then just check in on the site every day until Christmas and, get yourself some free porn. It's the type of free porn you don't have to feel guilty about. One more time, hotmovies.com, promo code MANWHORE. And now for this week's guest, Megwyn White. This was great in that I came in with literally no expectations. I discovered her via the Brooklyn Sex Expo's speaker list. I just took a look at who was speaking, and she was talking about something called sonic sex. And in all my slutty times, in my 5.5 years doing this show, I've never heard this term before. I had no idea what that is. It sounds like, I don't know, maybe just like, when it's sonic sex to me sounds like when you put the penis in your mouth and then you just hum. And I was like, okay, maybe it's that. I don't know. So I came in, no expectations. I did not research the topic because why ruin the surprise? I just wanted to kind of be in the moment and learn about something new. And it was fascinating. We just sat and we connected and we just talked for an hour. And I kind of learned her story. And her story is pretty fascinating. I will just say it starts with 9/11, in my opinion. If there was a movie of her life, 9/11 is the inciting incident, and then she goes on this magical journey from there. I think you're all really going to enjoy her. So let's go ahead and learn some stuff about somatic sexual healing with Megwyn White.
Really, Preseda?
Preseda, that's close.
Is that close?
It's better than the guy who handed me my diploma at college graduation. He said, they told us to write it phonetically. I wrote on the note card pro. C. Duh. And then he got Billy Prada. I was like, I don't have a bag, bitch. Like, give me my what is up? This is a very expensive piece of paper. I want my name right.
That's horrible. Aw.
Yeah. What did you have to go to school to learn about smack sex or am I saying that right? That's how little I chose.
Are we doing the podcast right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just checking. Yeah, I have studied a lot of different modalities and techniques, but honestly, my education has been a lot through my life experience. So, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was we were recording, but most of my childhood I experienced sexual trauma, and as many people that have experienced sexual trauma, I was in a place of hiding. I couldn't talk about it. But I had a proclivity towards acting and towards more like the expressive arts. So in a weird way, that was like sort of my first, I would say that's almost like my first introduction to Tantra was really because inside of that dimension, it was so much about tapping into the rawness of your emotions and transmitting and communicating something that's, more from the root and from that sexual creative energy. And I think that helped me to cope, with those experiences, and also helped me to see the strong connection between the physical and the emotional, and that ability to transmute. You know what I mean? Because some people think, oh, you can't really transform. Trauma is like you're sort of damaged. There's this kind of judgment in our society that, and especially around these types of issues, right? So that's part of the reason why people don't speak about it. We're afraid of being stigmatized and being sort of put into a particular box. But within the acting realm, I could run wild with actually tapping into those raw emotions like anger and fear and sadness and joy and, getting into sort of more the grotesque realms. And so that was, I would say, my first training. And I did that through college. I graduated from NYU.
Oh, same. Fellow Violet. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So you can understand why I was very upset that they mispronounced it. It's so expensive.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I actually never went to my graduation at NYU.
You ditched it?
I ditched it because we had a graduation within the theater program.
Right.
And I honestly never felt really that connected.
It is interesting when you were saying about how, with trauma and hiding it through the arts and people don't talk about it. I think the arts is actually one of the only places I will hear people openly talk about experiencing trauma. It seems like you think about Me Too. Who was coming out with the story? Actors, people in entertainment, artists. I think that's the place where, because I think there's almost this acceptance that as artists, something got fucked up somewhere that we're doing what we're doing.
Right.
The fact that I require the attention of strangers as often as possible, something's wrong with me that I need that.
Right.
If I was well adjusted, I'd probably be an accountant or a lawyer. But I'm no, everyone pay attention to the words coming out of my mouth.
Mm-hmm. And did you study art as well?
I studied communications, but I started doing stand-up my sophomore year. So I was telling dick jokes. I was I would ditch class early to sign up for open mics. So I was kind of in it, in that realm pretty early on.
Yeah. So it's a similar kind of experience. I mean, one of my main mentors in college also had experiences similar to mine, and she made a huge play about it and just really went balls to the wall.
That's the thing about trauma in the
arts.
arts.
You know what I mean? Exactly.
For most people, trauma is a therapy bill. For other people, it's their one-person show. That's just what it becomes.
Yeah. So I think that did give me some level of openness more so than let's say other people. I was speaking about it openly, by that time and didn't have it super stuffed. But I think after graduating, that's when I graduated the same year as September 11th.
Oh gosh.
And September 11th actually was the same day as my industry night, where we were performing for agents and talent scouts. And it was like literally this day was the day that I had been like working up to. And there were like 26 people that would get picked from, I think there's like 6 acting studios, within NYU. So it was like a big deal. And I was super excited that day to, perform. And obviously,
yeah,
it was
obviously,
not.
But and as traumatic as that is, there's some kid who's like, this was supposed to be my night. I was going to make it tonight.
Yeah.
They ruined it. You couldn't do it September 12th. There weren't flights to Boston on September 12th. No.
It's horrible.
Someone did. Those kids are so fucked up.
It was so traumatizing on so many different levels.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we won't get into that.
Sure.
That's like that's honestly a whole podcast in and of itself. But let's just say that changed the trajectory of my path.
Right.
Because up until then, I was going to be an actress. And, even still to this day, that's still one of my deepest passions. And I think is probably the thing I'm most good at.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I do work now that is focused on kind of tantra for actors and kind of helping them to connect their sensual energy and relate it and use that actually in service of the acting realm. But I don't know where I was going with this, but
I would say that's a great time to say that I'm talking right now with Megwyn White. Do you consider yourself as sex educator? I didn't know the title to intro you as. How do you identify yourself?
Well, it depends on which world. Okay. I am a sexual wellness expert.
Okay.
But I honestly, the thing that I most identify as is an embodied technologist.
Okay. All right. Never heard those words put together in that order. I'm fascinated. What is an embodied technologist?
Yeah. So
sounds like something Andrew Yang pitches on the debate stage. Like, and we need to be thinking about, switching to embodied technology. It's like,
so
Warren's like, can I see your numbers? Okay. Sorry.
So I guess it was sort of a reaction from me being in, the somatic realm. Like, I did a lot of body work for many years and was a Pilates teacher and a yoga teacher and did a lot of more sort of applied therapy modality work with people. And I always felt that what I was most interested in was more rooted in what I was drawn to with acting, which had to do with expression and how expression actually is this untapped gold that actually truly unlocks the body from the inside out and from a place where you don't have to depend on a practitioner so much. And so that term came to me when I started to, after I had a kind of awakening experience around the voice and really discovered that voice and resonance and emotion was able to penetrate the body from the inside out, similar to how you would think of body work, right? More from the outside in. And that led me to my body of work, which a lot of it focuses on unlocking the connections between the face and the sexual center. Okay. So we have like the skull, like you can see right behind you. You can see that there's there's many different bones in the skull. There's different facets, but it literally, our bodies are a technology, right? And the technology itself, like when you look at a dead body, right? It literally doesn't even look like the same person anymore. Yeah. And it's not just because the life force energy is out. It's that energy of the expression, the personality is imbued in the physical energy itself. And I like to think of myself as an embodied technologist because I work on those details, on helping someone to feel how their cheekbone and the expression of their voice actually unlocks a larger physical expression. And it was hard for me to find language for that. Like, how do I, because a lot of my work, I told you I work with with actors, but I also work within the sexual healing dimension, and also with singers. And so I needed a way to express that to people. So I'm not a singing teacher. Right. Do you know what I mean? I'm not an acting coach, and I'm not a body therapist. Yeah. So I came up with embodied technology because I want people to kind of think about embodiment as a technology. There is a logic and an order to how we're wired for expression.
What ties those three groups? Like, I mean, if you said you work with singers and actors, like I get
and
that,
artists
but
as well.
yeah, so like the idea of like working with artists, but also working with the sexual wellness. So what is it that what you do
ties
works
into
with
all
all
of those
those? Yeah.
So it really is rooted, all of it is rooted in sexual energy, and to me, sexual energy is like the roots of the tree. In order for the tree, if we think of ourselves as trees, in order for the tree to grow fully and expand fully, it has to have these strong roots. And roots are also in the earth. It's raw, it's primal. And I think what oftentimes happens, especially with actors and singers, and with people just struggling with connecting with their sexuality, is they have an idea of what it's supposed to look like and how they're supposed to perform, right, in all of these different contexts. And what's missing is that deeper connection to those primal roots, and being able to connect with that on their own without necessarily identifying themselves from. I'm not able to kind of find the language for this as well right now, but I guess if we spoke about it more in terms of specific contexts, it would be a little bit easier.
It sounds like maybe like it sounds like there's you're talking about sexual energy at the root of things.
Yeah.
And do you find like in the arts there's like a sexual energy just kind of inherent?
Oh yeah,
in there?
Absolutely. So like if
from what I heard from the experimental theater kids, it's actually the only thing that they did. But
I don't so much mean I think when we talk about sexuality and sensuality, those are different but the same, right?
Right.
Can you repeat your question though? Because I want to.
I don't know. I guess the idea of like, is there, do you find that there's like a sexual energy inherent in the arts?
Absolutely. I mean, so much of the expressive arts, for instance, is rooted in breath, right? So when someone can't breathe and they ultimately won't be able to fully connect with their voice and also connect with their emotions and connect with their physical expression of their body. So the through line of all of these things is that tantric breath. It's that ability to fully inhabit and fully connect, to the architecture of the experience via that channel of breath. And oftentimes what's inhibiting people is this, like, being too pent up. You know what I mean? Especially
I know exactly what you mean by being pent up. I am perpetually pent up.
I mean, we all are, and I think that that's why the expressive arts are so helpful. It helps to bring not only the people that are performing on stage out of their shell, but it also brings the audience. We create a collective space where we can actually really inhabit those emotions and really indulge and experience the power of those emotions.
So were you always this expressive as a kid? Like, were you kind of really tapped into all this, or?
I think I was. I definitely was always really expressive and always had this like natural inclination, this like natural proclivity towards orienting in this way. And, I guess that's why I was sort of blessed with those opportunities to perform and to act, because it was the one space where I was getting like praise and love and appreciation. And it was really the more I started tapping into this kind of tantric kind of dimension of the arts, which I didn't recognize at that time was that.
You didn't know that's what you were doing.
I didn't have that as like but I knew there was a freedom, that I would feel when I was on. I felt free. I felt like a bird. I felt like an animal, right?
When you were on, like on stage?
When I was on stage, when it was like I was on and I could tap into I could feel the emotion in the room and I was like transmitting, to me, that's all Tantra. And then I would feel when I was off. And when I was off, and this still happens sometimes. Like,
you don't connect with the audience or something.
I don't connect with the audience. I'm like, just thinking too much. And so for me, like we were talking about the Sex Expo, it really helped, in starting that particular presentation with getting everybody into their voice, standing up, like really rooting everyone prior to starting that presentation. And then it was so easy. There was like a flow to it. But I feel like our culture is so pent up and so image oriented, especially now, with social media culture.
Yeah.
It's becoming harder and harder to really orient into that primal perspective. My one Pilates mentor used to call it the kinetic mirror. We do yoga, we practice dance, we practice these kind of arts to be able to develop that ability to see ourselves from a physical space, from the inside out, as opposed to, what oftentimes happens with dancers. They're orienting towards the mirror, right? So they're seeing themselves in the mirror, but that image is not actually matching up with the primal expressive, aspect. So even when we talk about it in terms of sexuality, oftentimes I think what inhibits orgasm and intimacy in general is an inhibition of expression. It's not people not fully, first of all, being able to inhabit the cycle of breath, right? Because the more we connect with breath, the more we're actually dropping into the earth of our bodies, the more vulnerable we become, the more exposed, we become. But then also that's where all the gold is. That's where all the really potent shit is. And so helping people to understand, for instance, how vocalization, for instance, even just on a very base level, is tied directly to that sexual center. We can get into the science of that.
Yeah. I'll definitely want to in a little bit. Yeah. I'm very curious about so you recognize when you were younger the connecting with an audience and just kind of energy and connection with it. You didn't know what to call it. What was your transition from 9/11 ruins acting career? Maybe. Did anyone from your class go on to things? I feel like that will soil a whole class.
Wait. So what was the last part of what you said?
I was just saying. So what was the transition from
the transition?
You were supposed to have industry night. You were planning to be an actor. You're tapped into this energy stuff. You're aware of it. Don't know the language for it. And then how do you start getting into Tantra, learning about it, knowing the language for it, and practicing it?
Well, it took a long ass time. I will tell you that. But really, what happened?
Did you stop acting after?
I did.
11,
I did
9?
a little bit. I have done a few different performances, and I have done a few things. But I would say that I stopped pursuing it. Do you know what I mean? Professionally.
Yeah.
But what happened right around that time was a few things. Firstly, before 9/11 happened, I started to get a little bit more sensitive to what we would call energy. It's kind of in that sort of woo-woo realm. I would start to, I would look at you and let's say I would be like, do you have a pain in your shoulder? Because I would just feel that pain in my shoulder and I could just tune into it on an energetic, and you'd be like, what? Yeah. I do. How the hell did you know that? So those kind of things started to happen and occur, even before September 11th. I was also struggling with a really bad skin problem. I had I had some bad acne throughout college, but it got worse, after September 11th.
Okay.
And, as an actress, as someone that's trying to perform and, so much, especially as a woman, in this kind of world, it was so depressing. It felt like it also kind of hindered my ability, my confidence. But I honestly, now I see that, and I kind of knew at the time that was also a trauma response. What I really saw was the bubble of the acting school was sort of protecting me from a lot of that trauma that I'd never really gotten to fully process on a more personal level. It's so deep, you know what I mean? I think that's the one thing I have learned over the years is just you go so deep and you don't realize it goes even deeper. And so I started to experience a lot of energetic releases right around this time. So as my skin was breaking out, I would start to kind of feel these electrical currents through my body, and I wasn't able to ground, especially living in New York. It was really, really challenging for me. Sure. I was struggling with what we would kind of call hyper anxiety at the time. And then I discovered a yoga teacher. I met my yoga teacher who really changed my life. And his name was Paz, or his nickname was Pastrami.
Sure, why not? I feel like yoga teachers never allowed to have normal names.
But he studied with a Japanese master, and he had taught me. That's another kind of a wild story about how we met that was tied to September 11th. That was kind of a wild.
Please share
that story.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm interested in all stories.
This is kind of where it gets a little
11th.
weird and mystical. Okay, so I was definitely a seeker at this time, trying to figure out how to put all this together. I started to really think about, okay, what is this other side, this mystical side? And I started to, really search. I was obsessed with a song at the time by Lou Reed called Modern Dance. And I don't know why. I'm sure you've had this experience where a song just keeps getting stuck in your head and you're kind of chanting
How
it
Far
over
I'll
and
Go
over.
in Moana. I'm serious. Couldn't be kidding more. I've had 2 nights in a row this month where I've just up late listening to 15 different covers of How Far I'll Go. Do you know there's a ska cover? There's also an emo cover.
I didn't even know this song.
Yeah. Do you ever see Moana? Oh, it's a childhood movie you gotta see. Moana is a little Polynesian girl. She goes, saves the world. And there's a song about just it's an inspirational ballad of just how far she's going to go in life. She's going to leave the island. She's going to go take to the sea, even though her father says, don't go into the sea or date boys, Yeah. And then she goes, and we don't know how far. And then I would stay up 3 hours listening to cover after cover on Spotify, fascinated that you could do the same song 1,000 different ways and get stuck in my head. And it's a way to go, Disney.
Wow.
But yeah, sorry, you said Lou Reed, Modern Dance, better song than mine.
So, yeah, and I think around the same time I was really into Joseph Campbell, learning about the mythic image and just thinking about, there's these symbols that show up and they're trying to guide us. So for some reason that song was very consistent in my brain. And the first line was, maybe I should live in Amsterdam on a side street near a big canal. And then I moved to 81st in Amsterdam, right next to Central Park. And I'd had this wish to have a dance studio. And that was actually right before September 11th. So that was kind of one random thing. Another line in the song was, maybe I should go to Afghanistan and learn to dance. And I know this is kind of where it gets a little strange, but I was really
I came here for the strange.
Yeah, okay. I was really into Jalaluddin Rumi, the famous Sufi mystic poet. I don't know if you're familiar.
I am not, but I trust you.
Okay. Well, he's definitely one of the most prolific poets, I think, of all time. And he actually never wrote anything. He would go into ecstasy. He was a whirling dervish. And he would basically just spin and start to channel these beautiful poems about the relationship with the divine. And the first time I ever heard one of these poems, I was like, oh my God. This was still while I was in acting school. And I was like, I want that. I'd never heard anything that was actually tapping into a particular dimension that I could feel in my core that I want to have access to. And then I was reading a lot about the Sufis and this and that. And so anyway, like I said about the song, Maybe I Should Go to Afghanistan, Learn to Dance. I was walking down the street one day and I think I was chanting that song. And I saw this guy walking down the street with a globe. It was just, and I was like, I really do need to go out of this country. I'd never been out of the country. And I was like, maybe I should go to Afghanistan because that's the part of the world that Rumi's from. And I also had felt at this time that, I don't know, I felt like I needed more of a purpose, a connection to service. And I had always wanted to do something with my experiences of sexual trauma, of working with people in that sort of trauma realm. And this was before I had studied anything. And then I thought, well, I wouldn't do that unless it fell in my lap. I'm definitely not going to pursue going to Afghanistan.
Right.
It was just a random thought. It was a random thought. So then that night, yes, I was talking with my friend Billy, who was a fellow art model at the time.
More things,
synchronicity.
More synchronicities. Oh, my favorite part of the artist way is synchronicities.
Yeah.
Do you do artist way?
Yeah.
Okay, they're on that another time. But
yeah.
Okay, love it.
But so anyway, I was talking to my friend Billy, and we were discussing some synchronicities that were occurring in our life. And she said, "Oh my God, I've been waiting to tell you this, but I actually may be doing something really wild, but I'm feeling very drawn to it." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And she's like, "I might be going to Uzbekistan to work with this group." It's so close.
So close.
Yeah. But she said to work with this group called Artists Without Borders, to work with the refugees from Afghanistan.
Son of a bitch. Look at that.
So my heart literally fell into my stomach as she's saying this. I was like both terrified, and at the same time, I was like, oh my God, the divine exists. This is real. Oh my God, fuck. Like, I was freaking out. And then like in the next second, I was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe you're telling me this. Like, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think I might need to go too. I need to know more about this. Like, how did you find out about this? And she's like, well, it's this group, Artists Without Borders. And one of the leaders is this guy. He goes by Paz or Pastrami. And his real name is Stephen Prestiani. And so it was like a kind of joke on his name.
Pause is better.
Pause is better, yeah. But so she said, and he's a Sufi, and he's this mystic, and he, was into like experimental performance art, and did that in Amsterdam. And I was like, this is weird. Like, so I was like, I have to meet, this person. And basically she was like, well, it's going to be really hard to meet him because he doesn't have a phone. He's very Sattvic, super yogied out, very, living in a cave, but like in New York City. So that's the story of how I met Paz. And
you haven't.
I mean, there's more to the story.
You haven't met him, but did you actually get to meet him?
I did. I went into a 2-week search.
Found his cave?
I literally I went on foot, into the East Village, because she said if you go to the East Village, everybody knows him. He's kind of like a, like a sage in the East Village. So you just have to, walk into places and let them know this is who you're looking for. Someone will be able to guide you.
What a cool era, because that can't happen anymore. Now you just Google where's Paz. He's got Instagram. Like, you just follow his story.
I don't think he has Instagram.
But like only in that time period, like, do you get to, not anymore. Do you get to just say like, yeah, you got to go on a mission. You got no phone. So you just got to go down to a place and you ask around. You got to go find a guy. And that's that's the life I wish I could live. Oh, that's cool.
You're right. I mean, this was all pre-social media, and there was a feeling of like, I don't know, grassroots adventure. Yeah. And there was a little bit more.
No one wants adventure anymore. They want directions. Like, no, just go. You'll find it eventually.
Yeah.
So what did you learn while working with Paz?
So the style of yoga that he taught was Hatha yoga, which is, the most sort of simplified, I think, version of yoga, which is really about working with the asanas, which asana also means to seat. So the main principle within this particular style of yoga is we do the asanas, we work within these geometric structured patterns of holding our body in these positions, and we focus on breath and the connection of the eyes, which is the one thing that I find in most yoga classes they never talk about are the eyes, like actually holding the gaze. And there were these really specific details that his teacher had taught him, very Japanese. Do you know what I mean? How the Japanese, they're very like structured, very detail oriented. And it was really through that process of doing yoga that I started to feel my body like an antenna, started to see that there were these energy lines, which, we would call meridians. And now they're also able to identify these, in science. It's not such an esoteric thing. There's a lot of new research now where we can actually see that these actually do exist. So it was the experiential process of going and of actually activating that through the yoga and actually getting to experience my mind slowing down and a relationship to my heart that I had never felt, and just a kind of guiding light that the body did have these answers, that as a child going through what I went through, obviously it was a very scary experience. It was very like huge existential crisis way too early, you know. But I always had the intuition that I needed to stay connected to my body, which was a sort of different kind of response to a lot of people that go through these type of traumas. I was, you know, I did want to self-pleasure myself as a young child. I felt that there was value actually in that, and in obviously these expressive arts. And so I think from doing yoga, I became more curious to understand it from like different angles, you know. So that's kind of what then led me to exploring Pilates, because I liked Pilates because I was like, wow, this is a modality that focuses on looking at these alignment pathways and these primal expressive pathways, but more through movement. And then also using these feedback tools, which I think has been a big influence in my work. Is like with Pilates, you're working with a resistance, but it's variable resistance, right? He worked with a lot of spring tension. But it was rooted in yoga, and also in his observations of animals and his experiences in the war. So, you know, really trying to, I think, understand how this energy works not only in a quiet sort of, like yoga is very safe in a lot of ways, right? You're being quiet, you're holding these positions, but it doesn't necessarily help you in every aspect of your life, right? Like in communication. You know what I mean? You'll meet yogis that are also very pent up and held, and, you know, but I do think that if you work on a more fundamental level with these very simple principles, it can help you in all of these different contexts. But the problem or the limitation that I found with yoga, at least within my own experiences, was that I had such deep, intense trauma that the energy was coming up, and I needed something that was a bit more almost warrior-like to move that energy. Like yoga was almost too passive in a certain way. So I found that like working with Pilates helped me to kind of connect more to that primal power.
And what's your relationship with sexuality? I'm assuming this is your 20s, right? We're talking about
this is my 20s. Yeah.
So what's your relationship with sexuality at this time? As like you're really it seems like your view of it doesn't even seem like your view's changing as much as you seem to be really harnessing the energy and being aware of all these things that are inside of you.
I wouldn't say that I was that sexually integrated at this time. I didn't have like really good relationships. I was very insecure, you know. I really didn't have confidence in that particular dimension. But I did have confidence, like I had said, in this kind of realm of observing these details, you know. Sure. So I think in a lot of ways it was just helping me to guide me towards something.
I asked because it seems like you have a very different relationship with sexuality now, but everything you're describing are tools I think we all need in having like better relationships, better sexual experiences, just connecting with people and being aware of energy. I think a lot of dudes like you know, I think a lot when I hear friends complain about dudes in bed not like giving a shit or not picking up on certain cues in bed when they're not vocalizing like directions, I go like I think it's because he's not paying attention to the energy. I was like, and I try to tell dudes, it's like, not that I'm an expert, but I just say like, just pay attention a little bit, like try to sense some of the energy, try to connect. And if you're connected, you might start getting some hints and clues. And it sounds like these are all things you're like, you know, tapping into hardcore in this time. How do you go from yoga and Pilates to Tantra? And tell me if I'm using the wrong terms. Do you call it somatic sex or is somatic sexuality? Well, I forgot the phrase that was on your website.
That you is sonic sex.
Sonic.
And that's, I would say, one aspect of like what I've explored and what I've sort of tapped into with my work. I wouldn't say right now it's something that I would like to explore more now with my partner, Richard, and you know, helping to share it with people. But that was sort of an accidental discovery.
How so?
Well, the first was really, kind of skipping forward, from like we're talking about like going from yoga, Pilates, and then into more like the somatic healing realm where I was doing a lot of sort of more applied body work. I did that for many years.
Okay. Can you just define the word somatic? Because I actually...
So somatic really has to do with relating to the body and how the emotions and are specifically wired into the body. So we use sometimes that word and we're talking a lot more about certain psychological issues. We can't just relate to it in terms of how we experience it on a cognitive level. Oftentimes we really need to look at what's the body actually saying, right? And so this somatic exploration is kind of really looking at that, looking at how these types of things manifest in the body and how we can support people in helping them to kind of release whatever that baggage is and to feel more relaxed, to feel more at home, ultimately in the body. And I even think, actually, when I say feeling at home, I think is sort of like maybe the guiding light sort of for my own experience with all of this. Because once you have experience of sexual trauma, it's like someone steals something from you. What they steal from you is that sort of sense of home, right? That anchor in my body is safe, right? Especially as you start going through a lot of the trauma responses that really happen oftentimes later in life. Do you know what I mean? But we were talking about sonic sex. So just kind of skipping forward, after doing a lot of these different forms of somatic therapy, and also I did Kundalini yoga, a lot of different things, really just anything to also help me to deal with a lot of the energetic trauma responses.
Is it because the things that you're doing and trying, they weren't giving you what you needed, or was it more of a curiosity? Like, why so many different practices?
Yeah, nothing was really giving me exactly what I wanted. And I knew I had an intuition that it eventually would come from myself, but I didn't know when that would happen. I think a huge pivotal shift when I really started really awakening to what we would call the tantric dimension really had to do when I got initiated or learned this meditation that's a Taoist practice called Kunlun. And it's a very simple practice, and it's basically activating the polarity energy, or what we would call the toroidal field in the body. And it really is rooted in tantric principles. And really after I had that experience, which happened over 2 days, all of a sudden I started feeling energy in my body, but in a different way, in a more grounded way, which had been different than what I had experienced, in these years prior. It was sort of very, wild and a little bit chaotic. Okay. But then sometimes there'd be a bit of peace. But really, once I started getting introduced to these Taoist practices, it gave me another tool. And then I did that for a couple of years. But then I also felt sort of trapped by the work that I was doing. I was doing a form of body work called Body Logic, which is an incredible body of work developed by a woman named Yamana Zake. And it was a wonderful body of work, but I knew it wasn't the end all be all for me. I knew there was something more, but I didn't know where to find it. And that was really when I started putting that intention to, like, I was an actress. It started off with, really wanting to be, a lot of this journey really started off with me wanting to be a better actress, to be more tapped into that emotional realm, but feel grounded and feel self-confident from a core place. 'Cause as much as I did with acting, as much success as I got with it, I never felt really good about myself. Sure. And I know a lot of actors, you know what I mean? Like, you go through that, but not that you're supposed to feel amazing and always good, but you know what I mean? Just feeling that feeling of self-love and connection. Yeah. So, basically I had an awakening experience on a journey with someone, and I will admit to there being certain medicines that I had taken at that time.
Certain medicines? Does it rhyme with ayahuasca? Is that, I don't know.
No, that's actually a medicine that, ayahuasca.
I was being...
No, it does not rhyme with ayahuasca. Okay. It was a journey that I took with, I'll tell you, it was LSD. It was my first time ever taking LSD. and I was terrified, and, but we had this journey. I was guided by a friend, and we put a lot of intention into it. And the intention that we set was, for me, I want to own my body. I really want to feel like this was my home, my body. And I would say that was the experience that I had in that particular journey. I literally went through a whole developmental experience. I felt myself as a child, as a 2-year-old, as a 4-year-old. I literally went through all of these different stages. And then I was actually at the age of when I was experiencing that sexual trauma. And the friend that was guiding me pushed me to like claim my voice, to really use my voice, because that's what happens when we go through these kind of experiences of trauma, right? We go into fight, flight, or freeze response. Right. And so he was kind of getting me out of that freeze response. And I started then using my voice. I started just intuitively saying, my legs, my arms, my belly, my skeleton, and it was really when I said my nervous system, and I was, obviously doing it with a much more expression at that time. When I said my nervous system, then all of a sudden this energy opened up in my body, and I felt it come from like my sexual center. It was like this light, and it came up into my throat, and then my head went back, and all of a sudden this primal sort of sound came out, like a growling sound. Okay. And my tongue came out, and I started feeling how this vibration was penetrating my skull from the inside out and opening up my whole body. And my teacher had always taught us how, when you unlock the skull, you unlock everything, because it's at the top of the architecture. So I'm in this experience, and I'm feeling how I'm literally almost feeling how my voice is like a cock, in a way, right? Penetrating the yoni of my body, and feeling all of this kind of sexual energy, coming out at this time, and super healing, super blissful, super just a feeling of like also kind of seeing my entire life sort of flash before my eyes. Also in that moment of understanding, I'm like, oh, now I understand in a way like why I had that experience of sexual trauma, and then went through so many years of needing to understand the body from all of these different perspectives, to being able to have the awareness that I could do this. Because even as an actress, if this experience had happened, I wouldn't have had those details.
Because you hadn't done the plies, you hadn't done this, you hadn't done the kundalini, you hadn't done all.
It didn't have the like foundation of anatomy and of really understanding the architecture of the body in particular. To be able to tap in, to use that key, to turn that key, if you will. And so that was my first really experience with, that.
What's that?
That's the Himalayan.
She just pinched some. I was like, I don't know what the. It's like, is that LSD? I don't really know what it looks like. So.
Himalayan salt crystal.
Okay.
Which is actually, you can take some.
What does it do?
Well, Himalayan salt crystal is a fossilized salt, so it's one of like the ancient salts on the planet. It's very good for grounding.
It also tastes good for popcorn.
It tastes great. It's really good. No, it's really good. It tastes great for popcorn, but it's very, very grounding. It's very, very earthing.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah. So. Nice. And, again, we could kind of talk a lot about that. That's one of my favorite tools ever. Yeah, should we talk about?
Well, dude, yeah, well, I want to learn about, I want to learn, I guess, basically, I want to learn about what I missed at your workshop that I couldn't attend because at the Brooklyn Sex Expo.
Yeah.
Which is how I
think sound is a really wonderful place to begin with all of this. Mm-hmm. So after I had that experience, with this kind of awakening, I knew in that moment that this was real. I was like, oh my God, I gotta really explore this. So I went for about a year after that. I just focused my own journey on exploring how I could work with this particular sound, which is actually a singing technique called the vocal fry, where you stretch and relax the vocal cords. So it's working with almost like a similar somatic exploration of stretching and relaxing these vocal cords, but then also expanding it into the whole of the body. And as I started doing that and also I started introducing that work to some of my clients, guiding them into using those sounds as I was working on their bodies. And I started to get incredible responses. People started to release emotions. They started to share their stories. They started to tell me I had, worked on people that had experiences of sexual trauma, saying this is the first time they've ever felt safe in their body.
Are they also having the same experience where something's coming from like a sexual core? Like,
I had some people had more of like, let's say, energetic Kundalini kind of awakening experiences. That wasn't everyone, but there were a few people that did have those type of experiences. And people that you wouldn't have thought, had no necessarily, that wasn't their background, let's say. So there definitely was that. But it's just like anything. It's not like you'll get the same response working on every single person. Everybody's so unique and different and kind of at a different place in their journey. But even in the context of the sexual, this woman that I had mentioned that she had been traumatized sexually and that she said, this is the first time I felt at home in my body. I was able to see directly that there was this connection. When she said that, I know that what we were doing was actually helping her to reclaim, right, those parts that had been disconnected. So I would say that the through line was sexuality, even if it wasn't what we think of as orgasm.
Not sexy sexual.
Yeah,
but that's still part of, the ownership is still part of sexuality,
Orgasm is also, aliveness, on a very fundamental level. It's like awakening that feeling of aliveness and also that feeling of being rooted at your core to me. So, and again, so much of what I was doing was also very connected to architecture and alignment. So I was also really trying to map into the connections between how the skull specifically connects to the pelvic structure. So that's what I was orienting to.
How does the skull connect to the pelvic structure?
Yeah. So, well, in a lot of different ways.
You say a lot of things like so matter of factly. I'm like,
I know.
When do I want to sound dumb? Okay, here's my spot.
So for instance, the jaw. This is a simple one.
Sure.
When people have oftentimes really tight jaws, oftentimes that's a sign of that there's a tension in the pelvic area, in the hips, oftentimes specifically. Tension in the cheekbones. It's tied to the rib cage and also...
Is there a reason for that? Or?
It has to do with just the balance of the architecture. It's like what we would call tensegrity.
Okay.
So it's like you think about it in terms of geometry, right? If the top of the architecture is compressed and tight, that's going to bear more weight and tension down into the lower part of the body. But it all ends up manifesting into the skull. My teacher would be able to also see things in the face and I can do this more so now as well. Like for instance, I can look at your face and I can see that there's some tension, on this right side and like the sphenoid area, which could also be tied into, I don't know if your knee has any tension at all on this side or
I crack them every morning. When I wake up.
Yeah.
So a nice little push in. I get a crack here. I've also learned how to push my thighs in so I can get a crack along here. I just like making things crack.
Yeah. So I do similar kind of thing, but imagine we could unlock your head. So think of that. Have you ever seen the toroidal field? Think of an apple core. Okay. So if you ever look at the electromagnetic field of the earth, have you ever seen, right? It's almost like this apple core kind of energy.
Yeah.
So this is like the quantum level of Tantra. It's the opposites. It's the two poles. Each one of us is an earth, right? And there's two poles to this earth. So the lower pole is the sexual pole.
Right.
The upper pole is the expressive pole of the voice and the face and the throat, right? And when these two poles are in balance, you can unlock that orgasmic frequency, that field of like, oh my God, this unlimited, right, potential. And what oftentimes keeps us from that is, let's say, sometimes people say, oh, I'm locked in my throat chakra, and that means I'm locked also in my sexual chakra. it's maybe it's a more of an abstract thing, but I was looking at it very much on a structural level.
So you're with a client, like let's say I'm the client, you detect what you just pointed out. Like what does that work look like to unlock this?
Well, that kind of like takes us like fast forward to the work that I eventually ended up. No, not at all. It's fine.
It's just fascinating. Like I was thinking,
I feel like we're jumping around a lot. I hope it's not too confusing.
I don't find it confusing. What I find fascinating is that again, like I mentioned earlier, where you were trying so many different things. It seems like you're popping around these different things, finding stuff. It's like this adventure where you don't have the map and you don't have Google. It's like when you had to go find paws in the East Village. It's like someone said, hey, go this neighborhood and pop around and eventually you'll find someone who can, unlock it for. So it seems like that's been almost your journey as well in getting to what you do practice now. And so I'm fascinated by that journey.
Yeah,
so I'm not confused. I'm just
oh,
wow.
I appreciate that. So that has been my experience. So after I had this experience of awakening with the voice, and as I mentioned, I went through a whole year of really exploring these vocal techniques and tools. Got also introduced to some very high-level singers. I met this one woman that sang at the Met, and I started working with her, and she was giving me more and more confirmation that, yes, what you're doing makes sense, and this has really been helping me. And so I was getting a lot of encouragement from sort of different angles. Met also a trauma therapist that had then told me, what you're doing is actually unlocking the vagus nerve. And I said, what's the vagus nerve? I never heard of that. And so this is kind of...
I have heard of that one, though.
Yeah. So,
finally one I did know.
So she explained to me that the vagus nerve is this neurological plexus which bridges the brain, to the visceral organs, the heart, the lungs, the digestive system, and it's also tied to the sexual center. Right. And she's like, and it's also connected to the voice and ties into the tongue. And also, I don't know if she went into all this detail, but I then explored more and started to see how it actually innervated in the body. But really realized that this definitely was what it was that I was starting to tap into. The vagus nerve is also, of course, part of the regulatory, part of the nervous system. So it's what helps us to downregulate, to get out of that fight, flight, or freeze response. So sometimes, let's say you're in that freeze response, right, where you're like, you hear about when women or whoever is being raped, right, they just go numb. They don't have any expression. That's literally the nervous system shutting down because it can't, it doesn't see a way out, and it goes into a locking of expression. But obviously sometimes that locking of expression can be arrested in the body. We can't get out of that. So what do you do like in a session to unlock these things? And I said, you go like, I'm sensing tension here that might be tied to your knee. So here's what we're going to do. Like I go in for, a body work session. I know I'm going to get a lot of like, we're going to be stretching this and we're going to do that. So what does, I guess, a session with you look like? Yeah. So it's very like, it sounds like more like, what does it sound like? Well, there's different facets to my work now. So let's just say after that first year of going into the vocal journey, I then started to get guided around how to work from the outside in, also on a more physical, the level of touch. And so that's when I started to work with different feedback tools that specifically connect to the skin and to the neural pathways through the skin, which is also another way of hooking into the nervous system, right? Like things like the dry brush, the Himalayan salt crystal, different tools that basically helped me to expand the breath, because the breath is actually also, you're loving the salt. I do like the salt. I know, it's great. Like the salt. The salt is actually. I like this shit on Woo Woo for fun, but like that actually did feel like. No, I've had it now twice, and we're going into a very intense conversation too. So the salt kind of helps us to integrate. I get like a wave to process, and it's like yeah. So I mean, this is where it's a little bit mystical, to be quite honest with you. LSD in that? No, okay. I just started to get these intuitions of working with these different tools. And then I started to see how they were working, and it was mapping out on a scientific level. And I was trying to record all of this information. And then I started working with clients. A lot of it, my work now has a lot to do with using these feedback tools, especially on the level of the skull, is usually the intro to my work. So oftentimes for the first, month and a half, I'm working just on the head, and we're always going to be orienting from unlocking those connections that are in the skull to actually allow the whole body to release. So, I mean, I could show you some stuff. It's kind of hard to explain some of this stuff because it does sound a little bit out there, but I like to give you more the experience, right?
I'm open.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've actually clipped out this portion where Megwyn White practices some of her sonic sexual healing on me. And you can hear that in real time tomorrow as a bonus episode on Patreon. We have almost 200 bonus episodes available, and Megwyn's will be one of them. So to gain access, become a member at the $5 or higher tier at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. You can't search it through the app. I know it's weird, but because I'm adult content, you have to actually go to the URL. So all my $5 and up members, you'll enjoy that tomorrow. But now let's kind of lean back in and conclude with Megwyn White.
Yeah. What was your experience? Because I don't want to
I felt very and then I know you got to get going, so I'll wrap up after this. Yeah. But I felt very grounded. Also, touch is a big thing for me. So I felt like the water, one, helped me shut the fuck up because I can't talk, which some people wish I would just do that for a whole podcast episodes. Billy, introduce the guest, put water in your mouth, and then swallow at the end, and then ask for Twitter handles. But no, I was really tapped, when you were putting the salt into my head. I felt very present of all of it. And so then when you backed off and let me swallow, then it just, the release, you used the word release, and to me, it felt like there's almost a slight bit of pressure applied so that then it could be unapplied in a way, I guess. So for me, the release was the touch and it just, I don't know, it felt very calming for me. And and I think that's a big thing in sexuality that we don't talk about or we don't think about as often, is the being present, the being calm, I guess owning the body.
Yeah.
And so, even just that little bit that we did was a relaxing experience. So I could imagine what a whole session of that could be and how nice that would feel.
Yeah, it's unlocking the peripheral nervous system, and that is basically obviously woven throughout the entire body. And how that affects sexuality is that the more we have these pathways, these currents of energy open, we can keep going deeper and deeper into the potency of orgasm, the healing side of orgasm. And that, I think, is just endless. I mean, still to this day, we're still kind of tapping and diving deeper and deeper into it. And sometimes it's, it does require a lot of self-care, and self-connection. And I think the through line of my own journey has been a lot about self-care. The deeper you go, the more you have to really be able to connect intimately with yourself and be able to find these moments to be calm, to work from a more neutral space so that you're not in a reactive mode, that you're more relating with what actually is as opposed to what you think it is.
Being in the moment and present rather than going we're making out and now I got to feel her tit. Okay, now I have to squeeze his cock. Now we're going to I'm going to go down him, then he's going to go down me. Oh, he's not. Oh, yeah, well, I guess, we're not there yet. It's 2019, I thought. Okay, and now he's going to fuck me a missionary. Then I'm going to get on top. Then we're going to do doggy. And you're reacting to each thing instead of just being oh, what do I want in this moment? What am I feeling? What is feeling good? What's not feeling good? How could being present.
Yeah.
Instead of reactive. I think it's so crucial. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that as people, depending on where people are at with their intimacy, I think I'm especially into working with couples and people that are wanting to sustain that energy and also grow deeper with each other. And they're finding sometimes it's challenging because maybe they get stuck in a particular mode. They feel they can't tap into that desire. They're not seeing their partner as a desirable person anymore. And how do we bring more of that subtle level of intimacy into even I feel it with you. You're a very good listener. I find the way you're I know I'm like putting you on the spot, but I'm like,
Thank you.
no, it's nice. It's like we forget sometimes that just being able to listen and hold eye contact is a very sensual experience, and it's a gift. And sometimes working with couples, getting to introduce them to more subtle dimensions of intimacy really unlocks their perspective. It unlocks a whole new paradigm shift for their whole life. You know what I mean? Because then your partner isn't just this person that's sort of like getting you off as much as that person is like your partner in a journey that only gets better, you know, as you age and as you actually can connect more, you know, with each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Megwyn, this was fantastic. What I loved about this is I came in having no expectation, not knowing what in the world I was going to get into.
Yeah.
And I got to learn this wonderful magical journey of yours of going into your own East Village in a way and finding your pause, which seems to be your work and your practice. Where can people find you, find about more of your work? Where can they follow you?
Mm-hmm. You can go to my website at hapticbody.com and you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is Megwyn, Megwyn. And those are probably
just
the best.
at Megwyn?
Yeah.
Wow, look at you getting a handle of just your first name. I can't get at Billy. You can't get at Richard. Nah, but you look at that.
I was lucky.
That's wonderful. Yeah, no, this was fantastic. And I hope people will go check it out, especially my more woo-woo listeners. You know, if any of you have some Himalayan salt in your bedroom right now,
definitely recommend putting a pinch. Take a pinch in your mouth.
Right, but if you've already got it, then like clearly they need to be learning more about you because they've already got the salt. You know what I mean? So thank you so much. And why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody?
Aw, well, goodbye, everyone. It's been a pleasure, and just this whole experience with you has been a real pleasure and a treasure. And I really am excited that you also got me out of my own shell and sharing some of these things that I don't often share. And just to, you know, really open your hearts to the mystery of intimacy and to also the potential that whatever you're struggling with, whatever it is, that there's probably some gold and there's some treasure, you know, there to discover. And I love that you're creating a space for people to really explore that.
I mean, I'm just a comedian with a fuck show, but I appreciate the
but comedy, you know what? Comedy is one of the best ways to really unlock. When we talk about that toroidal field, right? When we laugh, when we cry, we're releasing, we're highing, right? We're expanding into just that mystery. We're not holding so tight. So I think, you know, comedy, and I love doing comedy as well. But I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you. I think you're doing wonderful things. It seems to be doing good things for people.
Thank you.
So, yeah. All right. Well, let's say goodbye one more time, everybody.
Good. Oh, you're going to sing it?
Oh, I can't sing, but I think yes. Can you sing us out? No one's ever sung out the show before.
What should I sing?
I guess goodbye in whatever key you like.
Okay. Let's just.
I liked what you were going with before, and then I was like, oh wow, no one sung before.
I'll just start with just a little hum. Goodbye. You're on a journey to the skies. Goodbye. Rawr.
With all of this woo-woo stuff, it's like, do I believe in the woo-woo part? Do I believe in the chakra shit? No. But if it makes you feel better, if it does heal you, if it relaxes you, then fucking do it. Like, you do you, boo-boo. Whatever works. I enjoyed it. I would do it again. I would do that for an hour. See what that's like. And you could too. Okay, so again, go check her out. hapticbody.com. I got a link in the show notes for you. Let us know what you thought about this episode. This is definitely kind of a little bit different than what our usual discussions, right? I don't think we talked about butt stuff once. Twitter, I'm at TheBillyPresida. You can make a comment on my Instagram. Billy is Presida. Or you can join in on the Man Whore Podcast Facebook fan page. Every week there is a little discussion thread over there. I hope that you did learn something about like kind of connecting and just being more purposeful. I think that's something I've always been trying to say on the show is be more purposeful with your sexuality. And if that purpose is, I just want to be a 3-hole slut at this party, then go be a 3-hole slut at that party. But if you're like me and you're like, I kind of want to have sex with people I know want to have sex with me, then, you do that too. Whatever works for you. Don't forget, you can get your name on my body. Oh, I am so excited for this. So do not hesitate. This is the time to do it, folks. This is the time to try out being a member. If not, at least to get your name on my hot body. Go to patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Become a member today. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. If you want to share your thoughts more privately, you can also do that via email. I love getting your comments, your questions, your criticism sometimes, and the occasional titty picture. Over at manwhorepod@gmail.com. That's where you can reach me. I do read them all myself. Next week, oh gosh, this is a little sad. Next week is our final installation of Sex in the Quad with Sophia the intern. Isn't that a little sad? Yeah. But she's also going to have her very own free bonus episode available exclusively on Patreon coming out on Tuesday. So if you want to hear Sophia and I kind of debrief the semester, go check that out over at my post. It will be free. I'll be posting it on the social media. All right, everybody. I'm blabbering now in this outro. It'd be helpful if I was like Mark Maron. I like played guitar at least in the background, but I do not have musical talents. Everybody, stay slutty.